You know, Rick, you need to get out into practice. You went to medical school to be a small town family doctor. And if you're on your deathbed and you haven't done that, you're going to be disappointed in yourself because I love that job as a faculty. I could still be there. That was one of the best jobs I had.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians. To overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be, visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. My guest today is Professor Emeritus in the Department of Family and Community Medicine at the University of Kansas School of Medicine in Wichita. His path to medicine story is an interesting one, so let's hear my conversation with Dr. Rick Kellerman. I'm very excited today to be in conversation with a very well-known family practitioner out in the Midwest. Dr. Rick Kellerman is with us today, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. So, Rick, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us on Prescriptions for Success. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you.
Well, you have a really impressive resume, lots of interesting things going on, and quite a story to tell, as is always the case. We like to begin at the beginning. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what your family life was like when you were very young.
Well, I'm from Hays, Kansas, which is a town of about 20,000 people located almost one halfway between Kansas City and Denver on the high plains of western Kansas. My parents met when they were students, undergraduate students at Fort Hays State University, and they were both in the Department of Education. My dad was a high school principal, and my mom was a grade school teacher, and we moved about every 4 years to a different small town in western Kansas. My dad would take a new job at a little larger school, and then he ended up back in Hays as Registrar and Director of Admissions at Fort Hays State University. So I ended up going to high school at Hays High. I say it's the best high school in the state of Kansas, and the rest is history from there.
It sounds like you didn't really have anybody in the family that was deeply involved in the world of medicine. So this notion that you might want to go to medical school, where did that come from?
Right. There's nobody in my direct family that is a physician. When I was about 6 years old and we lived in a small town south of Dodge City, Kansas, my brother got sick and my parents called the physician in the neighboring town. And they were greatly relieved just talking to him on the phone. And I thought, even at that time, this is a influential person in our family and in the community. And so I'd say that my interest in medicine really started when I was little. And then as I grew up, I enjoyed the sciences. I was good at math. And it just naturally proceeded to go into medicine.
It's a great story. It sounds like this physician that you described had a fairly profound influence on you. Can you say any more about where do you think that came from? What was it about being around him that got your attention?
Well, I'd say that there were two physicians. The one that I referred to, I never met. It was rather my parents talking to him on the phone.
Oh, really?
And the relief in their voices after talking to him on the phone about my brother's
Mm-hmm.
illness. Later on, the person that I really looked up to when we came back to Hayes was Dr. Norman Hall, who was a family physician who actually had delivered me. His son was a good friend of mine. And so I looked up to Dr. Hall. There was just something about his mannerism. My family looked up to him. I wanted to be like him. And so I'd say that was Norman Hull was my inspiration of what I wanted to be like as a family
Mm-hmm.
doctor.
So it's something about the stage presence.
With Dr. Hull, there was definitely something about the stage presence
Yeah.
and the way that he approached my family. I enjoyed going in for routine physicals and having reflexes checked and all of that sort of thing. And I just thought, this could be fun. I'm sure that there were a lot of other individuals along the way, Rod Bradley and Melvin Waldorf, when we lived in Greensburg, Kansas. All of these had some type of influence on me
Mm-hmm.
and the type of physician that I hope to be.
But of course, there is a path to be trod before you can get there. And tell me a little bit about what your life was like in undergraduate school when you were preparing for your professional career.
Well, I went to Fort Hays State University. It was the university in our town. And I was just a regular student, studied hard. Between my first and second year, the Hayes Pathology Lab had a little 2-week program that you got credit for, and you go around to the different departments in the pathology lab, and I took that. And got my 1 hour of credit or whatever it was. And then they eventually hired me to work in the lab. They would hire about 5 undergraduate students, and we did CBCs, multichem profiles, urine analysis, blood banking. And we did all the blood drawing, arterial blood gases. And so I learned a lot about medicine working in the pathology lab. And that was a great experience for me.
I'm going to have to take issue a little bit with something that you said in terms of being just a regular student. You certainly were not. You were a summa cum laude graduate. Surely the fact that you were a good student had something to do with leading you to where you have arrived, don't you think?
Well, I think so. I mean, let's face it, it's a competitive process to get into medical school. You have to have the grades, you have to have the MCAT scores, you have to have certain extracurricular activities. And I was fortunate that all of those things lined up and I got admitted to the University of Kansas.
Did you feel like you had that motivation from the beginning? I don't hear you saying anything about parents or anyone else lording over you and saying you got to make good grades, or you'll never be worth anything.
Well, I was fortunate that both of my parents had master's degrees. And so even though I don't think they lorded over me in terms of a direction to take or grades to get, it was just kind of understood in our family that after high school, you'd go to college and you'd probably find a profession. And now what direction that would take, they didn't really direct me, but I'd say that was just part of being a family. Both my parents were in education, and so that clearly influenced the academic part of going to school.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I have a message for you from our friends at Practice Link. If you're a physician considering your next career move, whether you're finishing training, relocating, or just ready for something new, make Practice Link your first stop. Practice Link is the leading physician job board with tens of thousands of opportunities across every specialty and in every corner of the country. You can search by specialty, location, employer type, and more, so finding the right fit is faster and easier. But Practice Link offers more than just job listings. Our free resource center is designed specifically for physicians, and it includes expert tips on CV writing, contract negotiation, interview prep, and managing your job search with confidence. Best of all, everything is completely free for physicians. So visit PracticeLink.com today to explore jobs, connect with employers, and access career resources made just for you. I'd like to share a message from Navigate. You know, after spending years in the financial sector, Navigate has met lots of clients with all kinds of student loan issues. They were confused, they were overwhelmed by the doublespeak and the overly complex forms, and especially the deliberately misleading statements from loan servicer representatives. Navigate recognized the chaos in the student loan industry and immediately brought clarity and real solutions. If you'd like to flip the script on student debt, visit www.flipthescript.loan/MD-coaches to schedule a call with Navigate. They'll tailor a plan specifically for your unique situation and work with you until the loan is paid off. What do you have to lose besides the stress of student loan debt? And so you subsequently matriculated at University of Kansas in Kansas City for medical school, and I guess that was around 1974. And when you got there, did you instantly feel like you were in exactly the right place, or were there struggles along the way? What was that like?
I'd say the first struggle happened during our first anatomy test, and I studied hard for it. I was well prepared. I knew the material, and we got our grades, and I got a 94%. And I thought, wow, this is great. I did a good job here. I can compete with these other people, because I really didn't know very many people in my medical school class. And then they posted the grades on a Gaussian curve, and 94% was on the downwards part of the curve. And I mean, I couldn't believe it, because I'd never been in the bottom half of anything. And now looking back, it was a shock. I was totally shocked, and it really affected my confidence. As I look back, it was such a steep curve that 94% was on the downward side, 95 was at the top of the curve as average, and 96 was above average. And I think it just shows the type of students that are in medical school, and also the psych job that I had at that time, because I thought, wow, I'm not going to be able to compete. 2 more questions right, and I would have been on the other side of the curve. So I tell our medical students, by the way, because sometimes they struggle, and they've worked hard, and I tell them, look, we know you're smart, or you wouldn't be here in the first place. And particularly in family medicine, what we're looking for are other characteristics, communication characteristics, kindness, ability to solve problems, ability to listen. So anyway, it turned out to be good and a good story, but at the time, it affected my confidence. There is no doubt.
Yeah, and that actually leads me to my next question and that is, having experienced that, having felt like you were really doing well and doing the right thing and doing what was expected of you, obviously that was a bit of a shock. And did it cause you to question yourself or change your behavior in any way? What happened at that point?
Yeah, I'd say it affected my confidence. And then fortunately, we got into physiology, and I did very well in physiology. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And but I think a lot of medical students, let's take it. You take our medical school class had 200 students, all of whom had done very well as undergraduates. The admissions committee did not make many mistakes. We had a really good class. And so for the first time, sometimes you're not at the very top of the group.
Right.
And I see students now and residents now that struggle with that, and it affects their confidence. And again, I tell them all, you're smart, or you wouldn't be here in the first place. I learned a lot. I also tell our medical students when they do have to struggle, maybe now they can relate to patients better, because
Oh, what a great
many of
idea.
our patients sometimes just aren't as, they just didn't have all the advantages that I had or our
Mm-hmm.
medical students have. And maybe now they can relate to individuals who are struggling along the way.
Mm-hmm. It's a great story. The next step then, as you approached the end of medical school and it was time to think about what your long term is going to look like, how did you go about making the decision that it was going to be family medicine and where you were going to go to get that further education?
Well, I always knew that I was going to be a family physician, because my idea of what a physician is a family physician,
Mm-hmm.
someone that takes care of individuals and looks after the individual as well as the family and the community. And so that was my concept of being if you're a doctor, you're a family doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, I met some people in Wichita at the residency programs here. And I thought, wow, I want to be like these guys. These were residents.
Mm-hmm.
And so ended up doing my residency at KU Wichita at the Wesley Family Medicine Residency Program. And I had a great time in residency. So I was
And,
really, really fortunate that I remember opening our match letter and seeing that where I had matched. And I was just so happy at the
mm-hmm.
time, and very fortunate at the time.
Yeah, and not only was it a good experience for you, but you had the opportunity to serve as chief resident at the end, right?
So we didn't have a chief resident. Wesley historically did not. And then we got a new program director and he wanted one. And so I was the first chief
Wow,
resident at Wesley Family Medicine.
the
Yeah.
trailblazer.
Yeah, the trailblazer. I guess so. I'm proud of that, but I had a really good residency
Yeah.
class, and any of them could have been chief resident.
Well, how did that feel to you, being in a position of significant leadership with all these youngsters around you that were probably looking to you for guidance? And what was that feeling like?
I think you'd have to know our residency group. We had 7 in my class, and I don't think that they looked up to me at all. We're very good
Mm-hmm.
friends. We still meet periodically. We're trying to get together for opening day of the Royals in Kansas City in
Yeah.
2026. So I didn't become too headstrong because of that position.
I have a feeling they had more respect than you let on, even if they didn't show it to you.
You'd have to ask them.
So,
I kind of doubt it.
well, maybe we will. Um, and so the next step was as a teaching fellow, and I'm wondering why that particular choice.
Right. So, as I mentioned, a physician that had a huge influence on me was Norman Hull back in Hayes. And my plan was to always go back to Hayes and join him in practice. And he died in his 50s during my second year of residency. And that just threw all of my plans off. So my program director came to me one day and said, Rick, would you like to be on the faculty? And I thought, wow, that is something. They think so much of my clinical skills and abilities, they're asking me to be on the faculty. And I realized later, no, they were short on faculty and they would have used anybody at that time. They needed someone to fill in the call schedule. And so I was on the faculty a little bit more than a year. And during that time, there was a clinical teaching fellowship in Waco, Texas, that was associated with Baylor University. And there were 6 of us around the country that were accepted into that. And so I would do our regular job at home, and then we go down to Waco for month-long sessions, 3 month-long sessions down there. And that was a great opportunity. That was really my introduction to more academic medicine. And then after I completed that year or so and the fellowship, I decided that, Rick, you need to get out into practice. You went to medical school to be a small town family doctor. And if you're on your deathbed and you haven't done that, you're going to be disappointed in yourself. Because I loved that job as a faculty. I could still be there. That was one of the best jobs I had. So I was recruited at that time to go to Plainville, Kansas, which is a town of about 2,000 in the northwest part of the state. Took medical students. One of my medical students was Dale Waxman, who you know. And
Wow.
that was a great experience. And I practiced for 6 years in Plainville.
Well, you did well with him.
Well, he did well with me. I learned a lot from Dale. He was special from the very first day he walked into my office. He was a student in Wichita, and during his fourth year did his required rural rotation with me. And we still are great friends, and he's had a huge influence on my life. The very first day Dale showed up, I took him in with me to see a patient. And, sometimes you just can't relate to the patient. It was just, my interview was just not going anywhere. And I walked out of the room. I said, well, young Dr. Waxman, I am so embarrassed that this was the first patient you saw with me. I really apologize. I can guarantee that I think the rest of the month will be better than what you just witnessed. And he said, because I was feeling bad about my ability to communicate with this patient. And he said, Dr. Kellerman, communication is a two-way street. And I took from that he realized it wasn't just me that couldn't communicate. It was partially the patient in this particular case. So Dale's been great.
Yeah, well, a lot of wisdom in that remark. And knowing Dale like I know him, I'm not surprised that he was able to come up with that. Eventually, you were serving as the chair of the Department of Family and Community Medicine at University of Kansas School of Medicine in Wichita. How did that fit into your plan?
I worked in Plainville for 6 years, and that's what I call my fellowship. I saw lots of patients. I was in solo rural practice, a lot of trauma, agricultural injuries, automobile accidents, oil field accidents. And so I really got a great clinical experience there. But I knew that eventually I wanted to get back into a faculty position. And the position of program director of the Smoky Hill Family Medicine Residency Program, which is 90 miles north of Wichita, opened up. And that was just a perfect job for me because our job was to train physicians who would practice in rural areas. And then after 8 years there, the position of chair in Wichita opened up in Wichita. My wife's from here, and it was time for her to get back home closer to her family. And so I've been chair here for 27 years and retired 5 months ago on July 1 of 2025.
Sounds like it must have been a pretty good fit.
Well, I think it's been a good fit. I've really enjoyed it. It's allowed me to do a lot of different things. I would say that I was really a pretty good family physician in Plainville. I was an okay family physician in Salina, which is a town of about 50,000, because I did a lot of administrative work as well as patient care, resident supervision. And I'm not so good a family physician in Wichita. I think I was a pretty good administrator and teacher, but in terms of really doing what family doctors do, providing continuity, comprehensive care, that's hard to do when you have a big administrative task. And so I guess I got the administrative gene from my dad, and I've enjoyed all of my different opportunities.
I have to say, I when I study the geography of the United States, a lot of questions pop into my head, and I've actually visited Kansas, and I find that it is certainly profoundly different from the area where I grew up in the southeastern United States and certainly the West Coast. What's your impression of how Kansas is different from the more easterly locales, or do you find there is any difference at all? I mean, I'm astounded at the distance between one town to the next, and all the towns are very small, and it's just a totally different sphere of existence from the perspective through my eyes. But I'm wondering how you feel about that.
I think you're right. I don't know that the people in some ways are any different, but I definitely think even in Kansas, the Topeka, Kansas City corridor, which is in the northeast part of the state, is much different than the rest of the state. And might be partly the history of the state, which was kind of laid out by the railroads. You're right. About every 30 miles, there's a small town, and that's where trains had to take on water or whatever they had to do. But particularly the western two-thirds of the state is flat. It's horizontal. So I say that in Kansas and here in Wichita, we're horizontal. We think here in Wichita, from a medical education standpoint, horizontally out into the state. And that even though Wichita is the largest city in the state of Kansas, we have the two largest hospitals in Kansas, Via Christi and Wesley, and yet it's a very community-based system and medical education system. And so I think there are differences. I think it's the typical hardworking Midwestern feeling. I tell you, our medical students here are just excellent, and we get a lot of them from the central and western part of the state where they don't mind working. They work hard, they want to do the right thing, and our job is to simply sometimes stay out of the way and help them reach their potential. And then we have a lot of them. You'd be surprised. In fact, KU Wichita Family Medicine, in an evidence-based study published about 10 years ago, ranked number one in the country for placing our medical students and residents out into rural areas. And I'm talking rural. I'm not talking a town of like Wichita or Salina. I'm talking towns that are fairly isolated of 2,000 to 3,000 people. And they do just a really great job. I'm really proud of our students and residents.
That really is remarkable. We'll get back to our conversation in just a moment, but first, I want to mention a sponsor who has been with us almost since our beginning. Physician Outlook is a splendid publication created for physicians by physicians. Originally a print and online magazine, it's now a dynamic digital-only platform using storytelling, humor, and community building to help physicians and surgeons reconnect with the art of medicine. Physician Outlook celebrates the entire healthcare team, including nurses, nurse practitioners, and PAs who value physician-led care. As artificial intelligence and corporate overreach threatens the human connection, Physician Outlook remains committed to the sacred physician-patient relationship. Beyond storytelling, Physician Outlook takes action on causes that matter. So join the movement, connect, laugh, be inspired. Visit physicianoutlook.com today.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
Another area that I would like to explore with you, and I'm really interested to hear your opinions on this. From your perspective, how do you feel that the practice of medicine, particularly within family practice, has changed over the arc of your entire career, which is substantial? What's changed? What's good? What's not good? What's your assessment?
Well, I think at the practice level, there's no doubt that it's what we would call the paperwork. Now that paperwork is electronic,
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to Plainville, I inherited the records of a physician that had retired a couple of years before. And I looked, his medical records were on a 3x5 index card. And I remember one entry said, cold penicillin, $2.
Yeah.
And that really said it all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but now that would take how much documentation for a lot of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so, number one, it's that documentation requirement, the paperwork. In family medicine, we do so much work that is not reimbursed because we only get reimbursed, and all of medicine, but you only get reimbursed if you see the patient, unless you're part of an HMO or something like that. But it's still very piecework.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother's family physician right now hasn't seen my mom in several months. She's in assisted living. And yet we call my mom's family physician, we email her. She's taking care of all of my mother's problems and doesn't get reimbursed a dime. So I think that the paperwork, the reimbursement system doesn't work for family medicine. Fundamentally, I find that our students and residents want to take care of patients, and they do a great job, but it's the after hours that they're still documenting. And that just takes a toll. No one went to medical school to do paperwork. So I think that's a huge difference
Mm-hmm.
that has occurred even before my lifetime. But it's part of the burnout issue. I think is just the documentation.
I think there are a great many people who agree with you profoundly on that particular point.
If I was back in full-time practice, I don't think there's any doubt that I would have hired a scribe. I had an LPN who worked with me who was the best nurse I ever had in Plainville. And I would have trusted her to be my scribe. We didn't think about it at the time. I dictated everything back at that time. But I think artificial intelligence has potential. We don't know exactly what that potential is going to be. It has a big downside too, I think. But if there's a way of decreasing the paperwork where doctors could see patients and take care of them and not have to worry about dotting every I and every T, crossing every T, I think physicians would be a lot happier.
Well put. Well, Rick, I have really, really enjoyed this conversation with you. You've shed quite a bit of light and wisdom on an area of medicine that I think is really underappreciated and underrecognized, and that is family medicine, which is, as I see it, the basis of system of medical care delivery that kind of holds everybody else and makes it as useful as it can be to the patients that we all see. And I thank you for being here to share that with me. But at this point, what I want to do is back out of the way, and I'm going to close my mic and listen while you deliver your personal prescriptions for success.
Well, there's a lot of different points, I think, in terms of success or leadership. And I think that physicians are leaders. We have medical students that say, well, I really don't want a leadership position. And I tell them, well, it doesn't matter. You are a leader. People are going to look up to you, your nurses, your patients, others. And so one way or the other, you're a leader if you're a physician. And so my three things that I eventually chose have to do with leadership as well as success. The first one is you have an obligation to have a good day. Now, I first heard this at a seminar sponsored by the American Academy of Family Physicians probably 30 years ago. They had a main stage speaker, and he said, you have an obligation to have a good day. And I thought, I just don't agree with that. Some days are good, some days aren't so good, but I don't have an obligation. And the more I thought of it, we do, because those that we work with as physicians and as leaders, the way that we act is how our staff and our nurses and our patients will react. And so they take our cues from us, and they'll forgive us if we have a bad day, but we have an obligation to have a good day. And there's a corollary of this that I heard from Bill Thomas, who's a family physician in New York, who's a famous geriatrician. And Bill said, the way that you treat your nurses is how your nurses will treat your patients. And so that would be my first aphorism, is that we all have an obligation as physicians to have a good day. The second one is take the job, not yourself, seriously. I think some of the mistakes I've made over the years is when I confused the two, and that I take my job very seriously, but that I don't want to mistake that for taking myself seriously. And so I think there's a time for humor and goodwill. We want physicians who are frankly compulsive. Our strength is our weakness, but I want my doctor to be compulsive. I want him to take me seriously, his job seriously, but I think we can sometimes get a little bit mixed up if we take ourselves too seriously. And then the third one is hire good people. And medicine is a team sport, and whether you're hiring staff or hiring nurses, you're really only as strong as the people that you work with. And that goes back to what Jim Collins said in his book, Good to Great. You've got to get the right people on the bus. If the wrong people are on the bus, you're going to have a really tough time with success or with leadership. So I would say that those are the three that I picked for this session. One, you have an obligation to have a good day. Number two, take the job, not yourself, seriously. And number three, hire good people.
I got to hand it to you for delivering quite a bit of wisdom with profound brevity, and it's very unusual that we come across people like that anymore. So thank you very much. Be obliged to have a good day. Take the job seriously, not yourself, and hire good people. That is some really profound wisdom, and I am so grateful that you were able to take the time to share with us today. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I hope it has been for you. Before we go, Rick, I want to give you an opportunity to let our audience know where you can be found or contacted if you want to share email addresses or websites or anything else, speaking engagements coming up or whatever you might like to share with the audience, please.
Right. Well, the best way to contact me is my email, rkellerm, there's no AN on the end of it, at kumc.edu. And so I look at my email every day. I try to get back pretty promptly, but that is the best way.
Dr. Rick Kellerman, thank you so much for being with us today on Prescriptions for Success.
Well, you're welcome, Randy, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us reach more listeners by leaving a rating and a review, especially on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if your app doesn't have that option, just leave us an email or a voicemail through SpeakPipe at www.mymdcoaches.com/podcast. You can also help by becoming a Patreon member. That link is in the show notes. And we hope you'll also follow our companion podcast, Life-Changing Moments with Dr. Dale Waxman. Special thanks to our producer, Craig Clausen, our promotions manager, Mariana Rodabaugh, and to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.